Hello everybody, how's it going? It's Ben. Welcome to the Bonny Rackham, ready for season 4. Let's just get straight into this first episode.
Get us underway.
Okay, so for this title, I've called it True Friends or Mortal Enemies. And this is based off a Woodes Rogers quote that he makes to Max in this episode. And yeah, I think it's quite a strong theme for this one to start us off. This episode, we see our pirates just going through it. There's tension on just all sides, and this idea of it either being true friends or mortal enemies, you know, comes up in nearly every dynamic in some way. So yeah, who are true friends right now? Who are mortal enemies? Conflicting motives and endgames. Yeah, I quite like this title. I think it serves quite well for this episode. So yeah, let's get into a brief summary and a rating.
First item.
Okay, so this one is written by Jonathan E. Steinberg and Robert Levine, the usual two, and it's directed by Lucas Etlin, who, yeah, we've seen a few times now. And so we are on to our final season of Black Sails. So to kick this season off, we have a very strong catch-up episode and setting up dynamics and conflicts for all to come. Some time has passed and Woodes Rogers sets up the perfect ambush for Flint and co. A phenomenal sequence which sees Silver plummet into the depths of the water. We meet Woodes Rogers' new companion, the cold and the cruel Captain Barrenger, and we meet his new wife, Eleanor. For now, playing the part of obedient wife, keeping out the way to soothe tempers. Max is still stuck, trying to talk reason to her, but Eleanor no longer seems to have the sway of Woodes Rogers, so the pressure is on for Max, who has lost her standing a little bit. Speaking of pressure, watching on from afar, Teach, Jack and Anne retreat. Once boarded, Jack's emotions are up and he has a tough call, which inspires some tough love from Anne. We see Silver and Madi's relationship has developed, but in thinking him dead in the moment, all seems lost. So Billy and Flint reconvene and pull rank at each other, so Madi has to make a stand. Thankfully, we see Silver escape from the water, but only to be at the mercy of a mysterious new stranger. It's a great first episode of the season, maybe the strongest first episode I think for me. With that nerve-wracking ambush at the beginning and the Silver escaping sequence, this one has to be in the 9s for me, so I'm going to go for a very strong 9.0 rating for this one. Okay, so yeah, let's get into those character deep dives. Get started with Season 4 character deep dives.
Next item.
So for this one, I'm going to chat about that first big kind of action sequence, mostly from Flint and Silver's perspective, because it sort of sets everything up, and then I can split the characters up like usual. So yeah, there's no cold open this season, first one without it, and we open with a Flint narrative and get that super intense underwater shot. At this point, it's hard to see who it is struggling in the netting, but of course now we know it's Silver. But for now, we cut to Flint and Silver chatting below deck. We can tell some time has passed again between seasons. Like with last season, we're not told exactly how much time. Yeah, a really interesting discussion actually came up in the Black Sails Facebook group, where I think most of my viewers stem from. Someone asked, how much time do we think passes between where we start the show and where we end the show? I lean towards 3 years-ish, I think. But I think at the least 6 months have passed here between seasons 3 and 4. But yeah, it's always really interesting to try and work out, and I like they don't give us a proper answer. So yeah, anyway, Flint opens with one of his great stories that I don't have any reference to. A Bible story maybe. It's about struggle and power and its morality. So yeah, maybe it can be applied to him and Silver, especially when Flint sort of summarizes it by saying, two people close as they can be to each other. So what do? Fight. Bit of foreshadowing there. So yeah, Silver and Flint, they're on really good terms in the time that's passed, considering how we left them. Things looking a little bit shaky, them standing on opposite banks of the river. Yeah, it's looking good. We see how far this relationship has come, but we know how far it's going to be tested. I think Flint will learn later in this episode how much he's come to like, to need, maybe even respect Silver, how he's come to rely on his companionship. We get our first insight that the pirate-slave alliance isn't on the strongest ground. Flint's sort of half expecting a betrayal, it would seem, from somewhere. He points out most of the people he's working with have tried to kill him or each other, at some point, and present company included. He adds to Silver, who I love, just sort of says, if it makes you feel any better, I haven't considered killing you in months. and they share a smile over that. Again, yeah, good to see where they're at the moment. But they both know that this thing is only just about holding together right now. Yeah, and Silver's the one that's sort of saying, one more push, one more big fight, one more score. Let's just hold it all together for a little bit longer, can we, sort of thing. So they're called out on deck anyway, and yeah, they're close to Nassau. Woodes Rogers' sloops are there, but there's no sign of any attack as of yet. Everything is very quiet. Silver heads up to top deck to join Madi, who we learn in the time away has studied, her ship and her sailing lingo. She's got all the jargon now, she knows what she's talking about. I wouldn't expect anything less from Madi. And we also learn from this little exchange between them that Billy's been giving them intel, likely something they've had set up for a while. And yeah, and this is where we first see that Madi is still very wary of Flint. And when Silver challenges her on that, she says, I don't believe you want to hear the answer. So yeah, we're not really... They're not kind of going over that just yet, but obviously a lot's going to go down between when they next get a chance to talk about this properly. And yeah, and as I'll chat about in a moment, this is an ongoing conversation between them. So yeah, Silver rejoins Flint, who's wary of the fact that the governor's sloops aren't moving. And there's also, there's no guns facing them on the fort. He sort of sees through the glass. But his spider senses are tingling. Those great naval senses, are telling him something's wrong here. So yeah, one of their ships in the fleet is sort of heading the charge, the Revenge. I'm afraid I've completely lost track of ships at this point. I call them the Walrus crew, but I'm not even sure if this is the Walrus or the fucking warship at the moment. I'm not quite sure. I think it is the Walrus, but I just always forget to check the differences between the ships. But yeah, Silver observes one of the other ships in their fleet, the Defiant, is sort of veering across their path, and they have to get out of the way sharpish. That's when, along with Flint, we realise this has been a trap set up by Woodes Rogers. A couple of unnamed ships have been deliberately sunk in order to kind of alter their path, to distract them, disturb their fleet, which of course it works. While they're frantically manoeuvring to avoid clashing with the Defiant, just obviously fantastic, intense ship scenes. Great Foley, creaking, and all the jargon, all of it, just, as always, just really, oh my god, edge of your seat kind of nail-biting stuff. And yeah, we see the fort reveal their cannons, the men come out of hiding on the sloops. It's just an absolutely great trap that Woodes Rogers has set up, and we see him at the fort, and this new redcoat captain, who we'll come back to in more detail in their section. But Woodes Rogers, he orders the open fire, and yeah, we realise our guys are in big trouble. The ship, it takes a battering, and Silver's ready to give the order abandon ship. But Flint being Flint, he wants to fight. He wants that last word. He wants to come out on top, or just, get something out of this. Just get something small. Just a man, who just never wants to admit defeat. So under his instruction, the crew managed to get the ship back upright. I think it's the Walrus, I really do. I think it is, and it does sail again. So he's definitely saved the ship in this moment at least. But he takes a long look at the fort, while Woodes Rogers calmly orders another round of fire. They're looking at each other. Obviously, they can't see from how far apart they are, but it is like they're literally right there. Flint beaten, and Woodes Rogers kind of knowing he's got him in this moment. And yeah, Woodes Rogers, his face in this moment is just terrifying. Yeah, but again with Flint, he just won't roll over. So yeah, he orders a fire. And the music in this scene, oh my god, it gets you so hype, and I get my hopes up every time, that they're going to come out on top, and Flint's going to completely turn it around. At least a little bit of damage has been done, and like I say, maybe he has helped salvage the ship at least in this moment to be able to come back to and repair. It's going to keep at least, with the damage done to the fort and to some of the sloops, it's going to keep Woodes Rogers busy for a little while. But yeah, Flint knows... Otherwise, that's it. It's game over. It's time to abandon ship as they're sitting ducks. So yeah, he gives the order. So yeah, we then get the frantic scenes of the men abandoning ship while cannon fire is kind of raining all around them. Of course, Silver and Kofi, they want Madi on a boat first. She's desperately trying to get him to follow and get on the boat. But there was no way, Silver was ever going to get on there until there was no more he could do up on deck for the remaining crew. Not this John Silver that we now know. Obviously, Season 2 John Silver, he'd be first on that boat. He wouldn't be waiting for anyone. He'd help her in. Yeah, it's absolutely chaotic scenes sort of in the waters as everyone's trying to get on boats amongst the carnage. Silver's trying to climb down the netting, but he's sort of struggling a little bit with his peg leg. It keeps getting caught. An explosion rains in above him, and just the whole rope netting just detaches itself, sending Silver flying into the depths. And Madi and Flint can only watch sort of as more time passes, and he doesn't rise. I love that Flint was immediately ready to jump in after him. He's literally preparing. He's taking his coat off. He's preparing to take his coat off to jump in. But when he sees one of Woodes Rogers' fleet coming real close, and a sort of snipe-off begins, by the time his concentration is back on the area where Silver went in, I guess he figures it's just too late, and like he's going to say in a little bit, as he's going to point out, he is still the captain here, and he can't be seen to focus all his energy, all his kind of time into one man. So yeah, the sad sort of music plays, and things are not looking good. But obviously, we know he's going to be okay, but still, in the moment, you're like, oh my god. Yeah, fantastic scene. So yeah, just an outstanding first 15 minutes of intense naval action, you know, shot fantastically. Great gameplay and strategic manoeuvre from Woodes Rogers, and an intense escape scene for our guys. But yeah, let's get more into the sort of character stuff now and branch them off. Okay, so it makes sense to kind of branch straight off into Silver, do him first, immediately, kind of after all that chaos, keep him as our main talking point. So yeah, let's do that great flashback scene with Madi. She will be the character that kind of pops up in different discussions this episode. So yeah, I don't think this scene is taking us too far into the past. The day before, the week before, not long, I don't think. But I love that we cut from Madi kind of looking out to sea for him, to her saying, where are you? And it's sort of cut into them kind of straight in bed, you know, nice transition. So yeah, as I mentioned last season, I'm a bit sad we don't get a little bit more of this romantic build-up to this point, where we left them last season, to them kind of laying completely naked in each other's arms here. But yeah, at the same time, it works. It works without us needing to see a first kiss, first words of love. You know, I'm only sad in a give me more kind of sense, rather than a I don't buy this relationship without those scenes. It just, yeah, it's just really so natural, and there was enough kind of great groundwork, I think, last season to just make this such, yeah, a natural reveal. So yeah, another great scene just talking about the power of stories. At this point, obviously, Silver is now fully aware of the Long John Silver stories, mantle, and the godlike status that Billy has put on his name on the island. But his main worry is what it means for his relationship with Flint. Again, as I've already said, in a time off screen between seasons, it does seem like the tension between them has eased, and they're on really strong terms. And Silver's concern is how this new role threatens to unbalance them. He explains to Madi it bothers him because when him and Flint are of the same mind, they can achieve anything. But to elevate one over the other, even as fiction, seems to be tempting fate in a dangerous way. He sort of says they've got a good thing going here, despite him or Flint not quite knowing why, but it just works. Although, yeah, as we've seen, you know, Madi, she's not quite so certain how it all sort of pans out. And she airs her concerns about Flint here, you know, reminding him of his concerns he shared with her about being so close to a man like that. She asks, you know, have things really changed so much between them both since then? Yeah, and Madi points out that she doesn't think he needs Flint quite as much as he thinks he does. And the talk of kings kind of comes up again, and she says he would be a very good king. She says if he were a no-good pirate, she would follow him wherever he led. Yeah, good line, you know, considering Madi is very likely the show creator's canon Long John Silver's wife, very briefly mentioned in Treasure Island at the beginning, though because I love her so much, I kind of hope it's not her, you know, and she leaves him kind of by the end of all this when we're done. In my own kind of headcanon. In my own headcanon of who that wife is at the beginning of Treasure Island, it's actually Max for me. I think that would be a great story, you know, for business reasons, obviously, nothing romantic. But yeah, that's sort of tied into a kind of fan fiction that I might actually attempt to finish one day. Yeah, it's kind of just half-assed at the moment. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, during that conversation, Silver sort of challenges her on a couple of things, as she does him. But again, it's really comfortable between them. It's not intense discussion. And yeah, she's not trying to sway him one way or the other. Unlike Billy, she's got no agenda against Flint, but she's just airing her concerns as a fellow main player in this. And also because she now is close to Silver and loves Silver. She just doesn't know him really at the end of the day, does she? All she knows of him right now is his kind of ruthlessness and his rashness, and anything that John's kind of shared with her. And yeah, obviously later as this season pans out, even kind of in this episode, she's going to see a lot more of him, and yeah, and his passion for this war is really going to win her round, and you know, and this dynamic really will change between her and Silver and her and Flint. But yeah, that's a great little scene, and we'll come back to Madi. Like I say, she is going to pop around a little bit for a little bit more discussion in a bit. So yeah, other than that kind of scene, there's not a lot more to really get into Silver in terms of kind of deep character stuff. We obviously have the fantastic, intense drowning scene, just absolutely nail-biting stuff. Again, the visuals, the music, that heartbeat sound, you know, where you feel like you can hear your own. My phobia of deep waters just has me holding my breath for this whole thing. And when we can see the surface, but we can also tell just how far below he is, just, oh my God, it bloody makes my stomach turn every time. Every time, you know, that he swims to the ship and not immediately to the surface, that tension is just excruciating. And I kind of wonder, what's he doing? Why is he not going up there, you know? But my guess is he's worried he might be sniped off if he goes immediately to the surface. But it's still a bloody gamble to hope for a little pocket of, you know, full of air so quickly like he does get. And yeah, and let's all just take a moment for the Dairy Goat. R.I.P. Dairy Goat. Well, we don't see it, but R.I.P. Dairy Goat. Poor thing, she's been through it, hasn't she? no sort of life for a Dairy Goat on the Walrus. But yeah, he catches his breath a moment. But then, yeah, this sunken ship, you know, it just sort of snaps further, and Silver's safe pocket of air, it floods. Great shot of the sunken ship underwater, and it's all just a mess of blood, bodies, and just shattered wood everywhere. So yeah, then of course, after leaving his fate hanging for the audience, we see right at the end of the episode that Silver's washed up on the shore. Obviously, yeah, we knew he was going to be fine, we just needed to know, alright, what happens between here and now? So it's night time, and in the distance, Silver can just see someone killing off survivors, just one by one, just going around taking them out. The tension builds back up, and he's kind of playing possum at first, keeping real still, but the torch is sort of cast in Silver's direction, and yeah, he's been discovered. And just, yeah, more super intense moment of him trying to crawl away, but of course Silver is in no condition to get away, even in kind of full state anymore, really, like that. And yeah, and the man catches up to him, calls him by name, Long John Silver, welcome home. And we get a quick glimpse of a scarred man with a glorious beard, and then we fade to a black screen. And I cannot wait to get into this great, fantastic new character next episode. It's almost hammer time, but not quite yet. But yeah, that's Silver. That's pretty much Silver this episode. Good Silver episode. Let's move on to Jack, Teach, and Anne. And yeah, we need a crew name for this little trio. The Avengers. The Avengers, you know, very much the theme for this episode, at least for Teach and Jack. So yeah, Jack is all business this episode. Really, I touched on it last season, how we're going to see this in him, these first couple of episodes. However long has passed, he's very much been grieving for Vane, and his revenge it's been building on his mind, and it's just kind of revenge, regret, it's just all been taken over. So before Woods Rogers' trap and ambush happens, they're kind of waiting, and they're set to join Flint and everyone in on an attack. And yeah, Teach, he's still very indifferent to Jack. It is that love of Vane that's given Jack the freedom he has with Teach, I think. And the fact that he's sort of loosely co-captaining, I think, you know, sort of loosely, maybe he's quartermaster, but it's clear that this is Teach's show. So yeah, so Jack suggests to Teach that he says something to mark the moment, and Teach, again, he's a little bit short with him, and Jack begins to kind of go into his reasonings with him. Yeah, and Teach, he just cuts him short, you know, he doesn't want to hear the speech twice, so he's just like, fine, just do it. Whatever. Again, he's humouring Jack a little bit, I think. And we see Jack get the crew together and begin his speech, while we very much focus in on Teach watching on. He says, "It's no wonder you don't say much." And then the camera sort of pans around and we see Anne sort of revealed in the background and just slowly sort of come into focus, quietly observing as she does. Not looking too happy, looking a little bit concerned, and yeah, we'll see why in a bit. We don't hear all of Jack's speech, but like I say, we really get a glimpse of how passionate he is for vengeance for Charles Vane. These early episodes here are a side of Jack that we really haven't seen. He's not a fighter that we have seen. He's much better with his brain, or his voice as his main weapon. But his blood is boiled, he's in need of justice, revenge, and he's very much in that headspace, rather than thinking much further ahead. Which is why maybe this isn't one of the stronger Jack speeches for me. It's passionate, but Jack's best for me, when he sort of pulls an idea from seemingly nowhere and talks himself out of a tough situation, not sort of charging headfirst into one like this. So yeah, again with Teach, he doesn't dislike Jack, I don't think, and the next scene shows he has some care towards Jack, curing this sort of itch for revenge. And I do think Jack's reluctantly grown on him since last episode, in whatever time they've kind of been sailing together. And while I think he does lean a lot heavier to humour in Jack right now, there is some respect there, I think. There is some respect kind of maybe building. So anyway, yeah, the trap happens and the three of them can kind of only watch on as the chaos kind of happens. And it's Anne, who sort of says, why aren't we helping? Why are we just watching? Shouldn't we be doing something? Jack points out that they'll kill just as many of their own in going over there, let alone kind of the risks to themselves. And you can clearly see that Teach hates having to do this, hates having to stand back. This man does not like having to retreat, doesn't like to be tactically beaten, very much obviously like Flint. And Jack points out to Anne, that their best bet and best way to help is if they retreat, and hope that the sloops give chase, therefore easing some of the pressure off Flint and everyone. So yeah, they head off to see if this works, and new man Barrenger is very keen to follow them. And so after a while, when we come back to them, we reach a point where Teach decides to stop leading the troops giving chase and to prepare to be boarded for a fight. And it's Anne that sort of questions it. Teach sort of says, I was led to believe you were the one without fear. And Anne drops a banger. She says it ain't fair to want to do a hard thing smart. Absolute bars. We'll get into where she is, with all this revenge over logic, leading Jack and Teach's decision making in a moment. But Teach points out Jack to her, who is kind of, we see out the way, in the zone, prepping, getting guns ready. And he says to her, he wants this fight, let him have it. Yeah, while Teach is also talking about himself a bit here as well, he's very much in the same, bloodthirsty revenge boat as Jack. He's just prepared to go a lot darker with it, as we'll see. But again, like we know and Anne knows, Jack isn't a fighter. Teach doesn't really know that yet. And here he is, practically leading the charge. While Anne, is a part of this cause and has a bit more passion for the bigger picture in Nassau than I think we left her on last season, her first and main priority will always be Jack. And she's clearly concerned for him, because this side of him can only last so long before he's killed. So yeah, anyway, the Redcoats board and it's a scrap. Her and Teach manage fine, as, we'd sort of expect. Both getting their badass little moments. Do your thing, Anne. Do your thing. But yeah, of course, it's Jack who we're mostly watching in the moment, who we're sort of watching through the lens of great camera work, as we're sort of really up close with him and seeing that grit and determination on his face. It's desperate, kind of feral almost for Jack. Jack is a scrappy fighter. One-on-one, even odds, it's not his forte, it's just not what he's good at. And yeah, it's touch and go for a moment. He's sliced on the arm and he's kind of pinned to the ground, and it's not looking good for a moment there. Though I am pretty sure that Anne was free to sort it if she was really worried for his survival in that moment. I think a couple more seconds struggle, and I think she's getting involved in that. As we see Jack, is finally able to get his pistol and he shoots the guy. She's pretty close by. So as much as she's not keen on the way things are unfolding, she is kind of giving him this moment. Maybe I'm overthinking it, overcrediting Anne. Me? Never. But she's too good a fighter and too concerned for Jack not to be tapped into this one. But yeah, anyway, it is a tough little moment for Jack, but he sort of gets away with it. and he gets himself a little bit of blood. So yeah, their final scene, obviously Jack's being sewn up. This is obviously a bit later. Jack's being sewn up with the doctor, and Anne enters, and yeah, shock horror. Anne's involved in my favourite scene of the episode. And yeah, she asks the doctor, your physician, if he's done, and he says yeah. And she just simply says, then go. 2 seasons ago, we all know that would have been a, well, fuck off then, or something like that. But she's grown. Our girl's grown. So yeah, she has it out a little bit with Jack. She asks him when's the last time he was in the Vanguard, which obviously is a rarity for Jack. And she says he ain't ever going to see you in that way. Obviously meaning Teach. She's got it a little bit wrong about what's kind of going on completely here. Yeah, Jack, bless him, he lays it all out, where his head's really at right now. He's not really trying to impress Teach anymore. He's just really deep in mourning for his friend and battling so much with his own regrets. So much regret for what went down in the carriage, for having a chance, to end Woodes Rogers there and then, but failing in the moment. He says, if only I'd done more in the moment, had been more in the moment. Oh, Jack, I just want to give him a hug. I just want to give him a hug, a pat. It's all right, mate. He's put such a lot of guilt on his shoulders for just such a small moment, that was hectic anyway. He's overcompensating now to try and make up for it. He says, the idea that he might be looking down on me in this moment and finding me not doing everything in my power to see his death answered, that is something I'm willing to put my life at risk to do. Yeah, that's a big statement. That's an understandable statement. Yeah, grief is powerful, so this sort of statement is probably relatable to a lot of us. Obviously not to this extreme that our characters are kind of going through, that Jack's going through, but you can understand the logic. Yeah, and she gives him a reality check, like I say, like only she can. And I love in this scene that we see Jack kind of glance into a mirror a couple of times, and this is almost like his identity crisis moment, as Anne had back in season 2. A mirror playing a big part of that. When she stares at herself in that dress and she doesn't recognise who she's looking back at. And now Jack is almost doing the same here. He's lost himself a bit in revenge. But while Anne had to kind of work it all out without him, here she has an opportunity to try and kind of talk some sense into him. Kind of, just try and bring him down a little bit. Jack's sort of like, it's Charles this, it's Charles that. So yeah, so Anne just sort of says bluntly, fuck Charles Vane. And an entire fandom kind of goes, how very dare you, Anne? How very dare you? And I say, let her cook. Let her cook. Yeah, she says, I know how you felt about him. I felt the same way, and you know it. Did she? I don't know. I never got the impression, especially from that first season, her and Vane had much love lost there, but I think a bit more respect probably was built, after he openly made up to Jack, mostly in season 2, and then obviously after last season's events. So yeah, I think maybe it built up a little bit, but I don't think it's quite as strong as Jack. But Anne continues, I can't see what fucking sense it makes to keep trying to make him happy when all it's going to do is lead you to joining him. Boom. Stop making stupid decisions for ghosts. She doesn't say that, but, poetic way I'm kind of using to sum up what she's getting at, how I read it. Not Anne giving me another life lesson I've taken to growing emotionally with. But to be fair to Jack, it's a bloody hard thing to do sometimes. Especially, like I say, I imagine in such intense and passionate circumstances that most of us will never go through. And Jack, he makes the good point in return, what if it had been me strung up in the square? Would you still feel the same? But yeah, again, Anne will just brutally get to her point because that's not what the situation is right now. That's something different. Yeah, just showing here how much she has grown as a person, because she says, I came here to get Nassau back, have a place of our own. I ain't here to prove anything. I ain't here to figure out who I am. And I sure as shit ain't here to pretend a dead man might think better of me for it. Oh, Anne. Oh, she could ruin my life.
Oh, Lord. Again. A fucking again. Nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit.
Jack is clearly, yeah, he's not hearing her just yet, though, in this episode. In fact, as they'll kind of discuss with Teach next episode, possibly, or the one after, he's furious with her in this moment. That's because maybe deep down, I think he knows she is talking some sense, crude, harsh as it is. And this course of irrational thinking and emotion does only lead to their death, his death. But in this moment, you know, he sort of says coldly, we'll just have to kind of agree to disagree sort of thing. We're all in for the same cause, but we're driven by different things. And Anne says, what happens when those motives start demanding their own ends, and this thing we're all a part of starts splitting right down the middle? And Jack thinks he's talking about them here, I think, and he sort of frustratedly says, that's not going to happen. And she says it already is. And we just see Teach orders the mass execution of the surviving boarders, while Anne's kind of voiceover explains that Teach is heading them back to Nassau to deliver a message. This can end if the governor turns over the one thing he wants, Eleanor. But yeah, we don't see any more from these guys for this episode. But obviously, yeah, this is a powerful statement from Teach. It's one thing to fight off boarders. It's another to kind of leave some alive just to then kill them so brutally and coldly. And then obviously, as we're going to see, display them and use them to entice a reaction. It's dangerous. It's exactly what Anne is saying. Passion for the dead leading your thought process. And it will have huge repercussions for all three of them in the upcoming episodes. But yeah, otherwise, I'm glad to finally be sinking my teeth back into some really decent Anne stuff. Strong scene from her. Firm but fair, you know, clearly worried for her partner and the path they're on. I think there are 3 stronger MVP shouts for me, so she won't quite be involved there today. But some great stuff with this trio to, you know, that we've gone over this episode and to get into in the next couple of episodes before that all comes to a head, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it's time to move on to Nassau and let's catch up with Captain Woods Rogers, Eleanor Woods Rogers, and Max, as well as meeting a new no-nonsense redcoat by the name of Barrenger. First off, Woods Rogers, as we sort of said, respect where respect is due. What a play. Gone over it, how it all plays out. But he's been learning from his opponent, Flint. Flint and Silver got the better of his force that last episode, that last big battle they would have all been involved in. So he studied, he's taken his time, and here he lays the perfect trap. Straight away this season, there is just a new intensity to him. You know, you can just see it. A determination, a coldness. Calm in carnage. It's completely unnerving. He's so scary this episode. So we factor into that his new companion, Captain Barrenger, who we learn was there on Maroon Island during that battle. Of course, I'm sure the majority will know Barrenger is played by Toby Stephens' brother, Chris Larkin, but talented family. And Barrenger is just a different kind of bad man, isn't he? He's despicable. He's just despicable, highly unlikable. Seeing Teach, Anne and Jack retreat, yeah, he asked Woods Rogers for permission to follow. Again, his men were kind of there on land and sea, and so he says he wants some revenge. He grants him to give his troops permission to give chase. Woods Rogers warns him, you know, passion will win out over tactics in terms of Teach today. But again, Barrenger points out, you know, his men are keen for revenge, so that's how they're going to be playing it as well. Again, passion, the very thing Anne is trying to warn Jack and Teach, you know, not to play this by. This passion versus tactic, you know, also comes into play a little bit with Flint and Billy in a little bit. When they start banging heads. Skipping forward a couple of scenes that to come back to with Woods Rogers momentarily, just to stick with him and Barrenger. They now have some of the survivors captive, you know, from what's just gone down. One of them is our favourite bringer of doom, the Groot. Poor guy, he goes through it. So yeah, Barrenger, he wants blood for blood. And while Woods Rogers isn't allowing cold-blooded execution in this moment of them all, his plan, you know, is still very much trial and execution with these survivors. And sort of Barrenger, yeah, tells him that no one is offering any intel on the survivors, on where they might be, on Flint's position, you know, anything like that. And Woods Rogers, he just can't understand why he fully doesn't have the street. He just can't understand it. He cannot comprehend it. That shift from I need to tread carefully, respect those that live here to form a good working partnership, he started with last season in kind of all he's done since. You know, yeah, sure, Eleanor, she played her part with the vein business and kind of messing things up a little bit, but he just can't fathom why people aren't falling at his feet. He just, you know, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir. He can't understand it. He doesn't know why. Yeah, and we'll see in a bit with him what it's boiled down to now, you know, tying into the title. So yeah, Barrenger sort of explains to him how the Maroons took ears from, the dead redcoats as trophies, which, yeah, sure, is awful. But again, these supposedly civil men in power missing the whole point of why this battle was needed in the first place, what their opponents are standing up for. These men at the top of the command chain are supposed to offer better solutions all round, find compromise, see things from both sides, not go in for this same cold-blooded kind of eye for an eye as their so-called lessers, as they think of them as. So, yeah, just more of that going on. So Barrenger asked de Groot, for intel on Flint and Silver, and good man de Groot stands firm and he tells him to fuck himself. And yeah, and we see what this monster is capable of. He cuts off de Groot's ear, which gives me the heebie-jeebies every time. But it is, of course, Woodes Rogers' reaction that is sort of my takeaway, at least, in this scene. Cold, unbothered, no sort of disgust. I wouldn't say he's enjoying it, but he's just, there's nothing, just a blank kind of nothing. And we've seen now, that he's associating with a guy who's just solely there for a revenge kick. He's got no real morals or care for this cause or the people of the island, And yeah, and we'll see how ready Woodes Rogers is just to hand a man like this the reins for the trials while he's doing other things. Speaking of doing other things, let's meet his wife. Eleanor, what you doing? Much as my respect levels dropped for her last couple of episodes, this is kind of sad to see. Frustrating in a kind of, whatever, now kind of way with Eleanor, but just something really sad about it as well for me. Sure, angry, rash Eleanor is annoying as all hell a lot of the times, but I hate seeing someone so strong-willed turn so submissive like she is for most of this episode. We start to see a little glimpse of it at the end, so I'm not, not going to go into it too much. It does start to turn, but she's been in this place for a while. And you know who else hates it? Max. So, the tease is given, go fetch my wife, and we wonder for the first time, oh, blimey, she's involved now. Wonder if she's heard about the affair, and how that dynamic's going to work. But then, of course, we're not left to guess too long, because we cut straight away to, I'm guessing it's kind of the underground cells or tunnels in the fort, where Eleanor, Max, Mrs. Hudson, and the women and children of Nassau are keeping safe. And Eleanor, she's embroidering, is it? I think. And Max is just staring at her. She's just staring at her like, what are you doing? What are you doing, girl? Who are you right now? Because, of course, time's passed. Eleanor would be out there among it, not leading the charge with a sword or anything, but she would be right out there, wanting to know the ins and outs, having a say, probably, in the ins and outs. But here she is, seemingly unconcerned, making doilies or whatever the fuck she's doing, playing a role, as she says, or making some effort to play the part. And Max says, it bothers me, this does not bother you. She wants to know why Eleanor is there playing this part so willingly, of subdued, obedient housewife, no say on what's going on out there. But yeah, of course, with Eleanor sitting back like this also means that Max's standings has fallen a little bit too, as we're going to see in a bit. She's not getting that extra information, that kind of middle ground between her and the top, i.e. Woodes Rogers. But we do get that little glimpse that, the Eleanor we're more used to is still in there somewhere. She sort of pricks her finger on a needle, and she cusses, for fuck's sake. Good to know, yeah, that she's still in there a little bit. But yeah, it's not good to see, because while Eleanor has seemingly put on a mask since we last saw her, her husband has taken his completely off. But because she's not out there by his side, she's kind of missing the worst of it. She's only hearing what he wants to tell her. She's not able to provide that balance that was really working them for a while, before she pissed it up a little bit. But of course, one can only wear a mask for so long before it gets suffocating and you need to take it off. And as a strong member of the worst timing ever club, this act isn't doing her, Max, or Nassau any favours in the long run. Hence, I think, Max's frustrations. So yeah, after the battle, she's fetched and she comes back above ground. And yeah, if we hadn't have put two and two together by now, we learn that she and Woodes Rogers are now married. He fills her in on what went down, and we learn, yeah, this is where we really learn that she's made a compromise to sit back, stand out the way after her actions with Vane backfired and they lost the streets a little bit. just like Max warned her they would. As to how much say or influence she's had in the decision, it's hard to fully know. I think it's one of those instances where she's told herself it's in his best interest and that she's made the decision more than anything. But I think he's well and truly in the driver's seat here and kind of cleverly manipulated her into this new role. And manipulated might be too strong a word, might be a bit unfair on him, but he's using her willingness to his advantage at least, you know. In fact, before I forget, you know, it's only fair to give praise where it's due. And yeah, Woodes Rogers will get an MVP nomination. I know. He's put a complete spanner in our guy's plans, you know, got himself a new right-hand man. He's wifed up Eleanor. Romance, yeah, is definitely involved in there some part. I won't completely deny them that. But in marrying her, yeah, I think he's been able to mould her a little bit into a sort of part here, while he's kind of had the freedom to run the show a little bit more himself. This is a really strong Woodes Rogers episode and catch up to what he's been up to. But yeah, we'll pop back to him and Eleanor in a moment. But let's catch up with my girl Max. So yeah, far from her rise at the beginning of last season, you know, which saw her grab the MVP win for all that she achieved between seasons 2 and 3. This is clearly a Max that is really struggling to stay in the loop. Struggling to really toe the line between both sides when, as we're going to see in a moment, Woodes Rogers is kind of stopping her from doing that, not wanting her to do that anymore. Yeah, as discussed, you know, her frustration seeing Eleanor kind of roll over like this takes so little interest, it would seem. Therefore, yeah, she's losing a strong ear and connection to what's going on at the top. But on top of all that, she no longer has the respect of Woodes Rogers. He's pretty awful to her in this scene here. But first we get just a really little snippet of what's to come. As Max heads to meet Woodes Rogers with Eleanor, she passes Barrenger, who's just beaten some men by the looks of it. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. And he just gives her this look. You know, it makes my blood run cold every time, and I think it makes hers run cold too. In this look, they have each other's number. She knows that's a bad man. A man I won't be able to keep cushy when he comes calling. You know, and more worryingly, he knows by this point, he knows she's got some power. She's the one with the intel on the streets, but so far she's been well protected. I haven't had a chance to see what I can get from her yet, you know. I think that's definitely what's going on there. Like Eleanor, she has got herself in this place. She really has, but I hate to see it. I hate to see it. And yeah, and it gets even worse, like I say, now when she meets with Woodes Rogers. So he informs her he has 121 prisoners for what went down, so 121 trials to get through, and he wants her to accommodate them, to take care of the funding. And yeah, Woodes Rogers, he's still playing, you know, the woe is me for playing things out fairly card. Like, anyone believes it would be a fair trial anyway, and Max sort of hints at that by the kind of people running it, you know, that have been there for a while already. He's sort of saying this, oh no, well, you know, all this I'm going to have to do in the name of fairness because I'm such a bad guy, aren't I, you know. But like it won't lead to 121 executions. And yeah, of course, leaving it in the hands of Barrenger, we see that it isn't going to be fair anyway. So yeah, this is all kind of just more crap from him. This is a big ask financially for her, and Max knows it. She's concerned about the costs. So yeah, he snaps at her a bit. He's pretty rude and, you know, can almost get a taste of what he might have said to kind of subdue Eleanor once they married. Although he wouldn't have been so rude about it, but he would have used the same sort of wordplay and sort of thing. He uses the friend card as a sort of, why are you objecting against this right now? Why are you giving me a hard time arguing against me, you know? Are we friends? I thought we were friends. You know, he's kind of doing that without listening, you know, to Max's kind of, I can't pull money out my arse. And yeah, and while Max does still stand up for herself, you know, which I love, she will always try, she's still so much more milder than we've ever seen her. You know, she's calling him my lord, and she's almost mumbling a little bit. She's scared, and I hate it. I hate it. But yeah, gone is logical reasoning now, like I say, with Woodes Rogers. To him, anyone that questions him, he's taking it as they're not on side, so therefore they're against him. And despite knowing from the start that Max does play both sides and is, you know, as a silent partner for them, because it'll work in their benefit, he's suddenly not for it. He's just got no time for it. And at some point, Eleanor kind of tries to interject on Max's behalf, and he shuts her right down with a really cold kind of, I can't remember what he says, but he just gives her a cold kind of hand gesture, cuts her short. Really rude. He addresses Max, and then his tone really shifts. You know, he puts the fear in her. He puts the fear in me as a viewer. He says there are only two sides to this now. True friends or mortal enemies, and nothing in between. Yeah, so yeah, title tie-in. Which, yeah, of course, as probably the best weaver of playing all sides in the show, this is very dangerous territory for Max. And yeah, this regime is sounding more like a dictatorship than the encouraging kind of leadership it started as when he first came, what he first promised. But yeah, there's not much else to get into with Max this episode. But yeah, it's definitely safe to say she's lost a fair bit of playing field on this side of things, you know, in the time we've been away. And while she's doing her best to try and explain to him, it's in their best interest, you know, if she's seen as a sympathetic ear to the streets, an ally to the streets. Woodes Rogers just doesn't have the patience for that anymore. You know, he's got no interest in pretending to play that role anymore. And so we get into our last little talking point with this gang. And to be fair to Eleanor, like I say, yeah, she does rise a little bit. She gives him a bollocking once they're alone in this moment, you know, for his treatment of Max. Interesting use of words that she says. She says she contorted herself into this role, mutilated myself so it would fit, because I believed as long as you believed I was your partner, it didn't matter what anyone else believed. And yeah, this is really interesting use of words for Eleanor, you know, using harsh words like contorted and mutilated, you know, when discussing a marriage, you know, and a loving equal partnership. It's not too dissimilar for some of her last words with Vane, where she calls him deformed, unformed. It kind of reminds me of that kind of wordplay and kind of, yeah, poetry like she sort of comes out with sometimes. Except she's talking about herself here. And yeah, this is where we get a little bit of our Eleanor spirit back, you know, a little bit of a punch back. And she asks him plainly, what the fuck, you know, was that sort of thing? What he's asking of Max is unreasonable, as was the way he asked it. And coolly he says there's some things, you know, that you're better off not knowing. And she just points out that's not what they agreed. Yeah, again, Eleanor, no idea, or just not admitting to herself the power she's lost in whatever time has passed. She asks him what he's not telling her. She doesn't want to be protected, you know, she needs to know why he's behaving like Victor is so far away, when to her it seems, you know, everything seems to be going well. And so we learn of his divorce from his first wife Sarah hasn't gone smoothly. It was taken badly, and the family have persuaded his creditors to speed up his loans a little bit. So he's on a much tighter schedule to return those debts. I'm not sure if this plot point comes up again. I can't help but wonder, not really knowing where this goes again, if he's lying here about the ex-wife's family. I mean, about that extra pressure. If he's lying to keep her sweet, get her off his back. Look, this is why things are a bit rough around the edges right now. The pressure's on, my time's running out, you know, sort of thing. But in fact, that's not the case, and he's just clearly lost his patience and composure with it all, dropped the mask, and is prepared to go to those darker places. But yeah, it could equally be true, and there is even more time pressure on him than he already had. While not great for him, it still gives him a good excuse to be a bit rough around the edges, embracing that darker side he's kept hidden. I think it probably is the latter, and it probably is true, and he's being truthful here. It's so hard to know with this guy, especially now. And when she sort of asks why he didn't tell her, he says she's not a compromise to him, and he has no regrets on marrying her. I really, really want to believe him when it comes to Eleanor. For her, I guess, more than anything, you know, for her kind of sake and for her kind of peace. But I just never know or fully believe what comes, you know, from either of them, him especially, when talking about each other. You know, I just never know what to trust. Eleanor has seemingly gone all in from where we left, and he does love her. Very clearly, he does love her, but yeah. New episode, new season, same uncertain conclusions with these two, unfortunately for me. And this is where Eleanor brings up her family. You know, while she was associating with pirates, they didn't want to know, obviously. But by his side now, they might be able to help financially. So that little plot point and factor's been set up. So yeah, that's those guys. Woodes Rogers very much showing his true self now. We still don't quite know what he's capable of yet. But we can see there's a lot more darkness there than what we left him with. But not being fully in the loop for however long has given him a chance to act out with no conscience on his shoulder. No, Eleanor is not the best Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder that you want, I know, but no Eleanor involved means the better, bigger player of Max is missing out on keeping kind of tensions down and things running smoothly. But yeah, let's move on to our final little group of Flint, Maddie and Billy. I feel I've been talking a long time. I know these are going to start getting longer because it's so good. It's so busy, it's so good. No scene is a throwaway, it's just... So yeah, we come back to the immediate aftermath of that great opening scene. Flint and Maddie are watching survivors kind of make their way to shore. And every time they've sort of seen it's not Silver, you know, they've both obviously been losing a little bit more hope. And Flint points out the boat coming in now is the last one, you know, and that there's 200 odd men unaccounted for. So yeah, he has to be careful how much time he spends waiting on the possibility of Silver's return, with so many to take care of already. But yeah, he's putting a lot of hope in this returning boat that Silver's on it, just as she is. In his way, I think Flint's trying to sort of console her here in this sort of scene. Both clearly kind of grieving in this moment, not wanting to fully admit he's gone. But yeah, not unlike Silver when Maddie was grieving her father, you know, Flint says he doesn't know what to say. To sum it up, he just simply says, he was my friend too. Yeah, a real vulnerable moment for Flint here. Something anyone other than Gates, Miranda, or Silver himself rarely sees. Yeah, you can just feel the hopelessness in this moment of what losing Silver means, both for the cause and for him on a personal level now. After everything they did, and they have become friends in the end. And yeah, we see it's not Silver on the incoming boat, and the hope just kind of drains from both their faces. But before they can chat, say any more, you know, enter Billy Bones, who's about to get a bollocking. Of course, Flint is furious. You know, they were going off Billy's intel, and there's been a miscommunication somewhere. I can't remember the ins and outs of how this happens in terms of plots. I think we pick it up next episode. It's something to do with Featherstone and Adele and kind of Max and all that, I think. Either way, yeah, Flint is furious and Billy barks back equally intense. Says he did warn him, but yeah, something got lost in communication somewhere. So yeah, Billy is not all bones anymore. He is beefed up. Yeah, Tom Hopper did some working out between seasons. He is swole. Damn. This is final phase Billy now, very much. Yeah, he's got a beard now, he's wearing all black, he's beefed up. Yeah, his confidence and a little bit of his arrogance, that is ascended. You know, his leadership is on another level now, as we'll see. But more importantly, he has got absolutely no time or patience for Flint anymore. So on learning Silver is presumed dead, we sort of see Billy's reaction. You know, we see his face, his plans, everything he's created kind of crashing down around him in a moment. He says to Flint there'll be debts to be repaid after today, but right now we need to get off the sand. And obviously that's just a kind of throwaway line, but we'll see in a moment, you know, about traitors and things like that, what Billy's thoughts on that are now. So yeah, Flint sort of just watches and says nothing as Billy and his crew start to walk off. But yeah, maybe he's not fully realised it just yet, but giving Billy that power, while he's done great things with his hidden organisation on Nassau, with Silver seemingly out of the picture now, it's put himself, Flint, at a disadvantage in terms of kind of getting Billy back under his own charge. So it's obviously later on and they're walking in the dark now, getting close to camp, and yeah, Billy is just filling Flint in on Barrenger and so therefore us and what he's capable of. And yeah, he swore his loyalty towards Rogers and began a purge of anyone he considered loyal to the pirates' cause. You know, meaning the streets became more scared of him than they are of them. Ruling by fear. As we're going to see, Billy's sort of taking the same note as well. So yeah, as Billy points out, yeah, the black spots have stopped having any effect. And things have got really intense. And this is the point that we realise, yeah, our Billy Bones has truly changed. Yeah, he says so casually how Barrenger turned a couple of his men against them, how the plan almost worked, but they discovered it in time. And we, you know, through Flint, kind of see the remains of 2 dead bodies, clearly been through some awful punishment, you know, still hanging out at the base for all to see. Flint can be ruthless, we've seen it. We've seen what he's capable of, but there is something really kind of so much darker about this, about the emotionless way, you know, that Billy's telling this. Obviously we saw how devastated Flint was in his actions immediately after that and the desperation of it all. But yeah, you know, again, this eye for an eye, no time for middle of the road emotions and loyalties. it's affecting both sides. But yeah, things have got really dark on Nassau, and yeah, a lot's going on in Flint's mind here, I think. And Billy sort of continues, things have settled and his people more or less have got free reign on the island. And of course, Flint is right on that, you know, your people. But at this point, some scouts return and their conversation is cut short. And with Madi walking close by during all of this, she hasn't said a word, but she's kind of just been taking everything in. Smart, but sort of silent observer that she is. And yeah, this is concerning for them both, both her and Flint. And yeah, while we're going to come back to him in a second, if Woodes Rogers is to get an MVP shout for, you know, what he's achieved while we've been away, then Billy Bones should get one too. Yeah, sure, there is a new, really dark energy to him, but things have clearly been intense with Barrenger's arrival. And he's mostly kept them in the game as far as Nassau is concerned. He's done well, so yeah, he deserves some credit for that. But I think this might be my last Billy Bones MVP nomination, as he just turns completely into a wild man with a vendetta kind of next episode, without any thought of bigger picture, and with just such a loss of reason and logic, and that only seems to double down kind of episode after episode with him. And oh, he's going to start to trail so far away from my lovely Billy soon. But he's at least got one more nomination in there. So once inside Miranda's, you know, the home formerly once known as Miranda's, known as hers and Flint's, we see it's now just a fully operational base. And my heart just really goes out to Flint here. Yeah, sure, it would have been his suggestion, I imagine, for Billy to use it in the first place, but I don't think he was prepared to walk in and just see it so changed. Wall to wall, sort of maps, charts, men moving about. When he picks up that broken teacup that sort of had its own arc, we saw that teacup so early with him and Miranda in that first season, and then we saw Vane kind of fiddling with it near the end of last season, to now, here it is, just being smashed on the floor here. Discarded. Yeah, domesticity, I can't say it, but you know that word. The chance to settle down, something we know Flint so badly wanted. That cup was representing that in some ways. Now broken, you know, no chance of repair. Not here. You know, not in this house. Probably not Nassau. I'm not sure if Flint's deepening all that in this moment, but that's the symbolism that I take from it anyway. And I can feel here that he just wants to tell everyone to get the fuck out. Get the hell out of this house. Sort of how Vane's fiddling annoyed him so much. So yeah, this must be very hard for him here. But yeah, he's ultimately set this thing in motion, and Billy's just kind of ran with it. But again, yeah, props are deserved to Billy. It's not all doom and gloom with him just yet. And this is a pretty tidy operation he's got going. But yeah, as I say, Madi, she's been taking everything in as well. While he's looking at the broken cup, she just asks him simply, is it over? The ships are gone, army is fractured, and the only man she trusted is dead. And she asks Flint if this war died with him. Yeah, damn, it's looking bleak, isn't it? It's looking bleak. Really setting our favourites against it, this is the first episode. Really setting the odds against us. So our final scene with these three and to discuss. So yeah, Billy rejoins them, you know, and he gives them a little bit of intel, and yet they need to get their numbers back up after today's attack. So he suggests the Underhill Plantation, home of well over 200 slaves. He hasn't had the manpower until now to take it, but with their combined forces, he thinks, you know, that's a good idea. Now, this is a good plan from Billy for me. More men replace those lost. But Flint just shuts him down mid-flow and says too long. They don't have the time. So they argue back and forth a little bit. And yeah, they're getting nowhere. They're just absolutely getting nowhere. And this is tough because I see where Flint's coming from. Time isn't really on their side. But he is grieving and, you know, he's thinking things are a little bit hopeless without Silver now. And I think it's safe to say, you know, a little bit of jealousy, or I don't know, maybe jealousy, not quite the right word, but he hates not being in charge. He hates it. You know, it's not his plan. Something Billy sort of had issues with him and brought up before. You know, Flint getting salty because he didn't come up with something. Is that the only reason? But it is very much also in Flint's nature to suggest an immediate attack. But yeah, I do lean more towards Billy's idea here in this moment. And I can understand why he gets so frustrated with Flint. But it's just showing us and Madi as equals that Billy and Flint do not have that working relationship that Flint and Silver do. You know, it's just not even close. Flint will never see Billy as an equal, and Billy will absolutely, like I say, never submit to be, you know, under Flint's command ever again now. He won't ever do that. You know, he's ascended too high. Even so, as we're soon going to see in future episodes, he'll go against him just to spite him because he wants the last word. So yeah, we see here well and truly, as fans of them both, as probably most of us maybe are still by this point, we're going to have to pick a side soon between these two finally. It's been there all along, but you know, this is really Billy or Flint. And yeah, Billy's actions are going to just make it so easy for most of us to pick next episode or so. But again, if I had to pick in this moment, I'd go for Billy's plan. But yeah, that hatred of Flint is evident, and it's definitely not helping him in making his point calmly. He points out with Silver gone, Flint's not going to just take over all he's built here. Again, it's fair. Billy again makes the point of saying my men, you know, goes over how he's led them, what they've been through together while Flint's not been around. Will he come in useful? Yeah. But do they need him here? No, Billy says matter of fact. Yeah, there's logic here, I can understand it, but Flint isn't a follower, we know that. And in observing this conversation quietly, Madi understands that this is just becoming a pissing contest that is just going nowhere. So yeah, Flint plays his hand, and it's a little bit desperate. This isn't Flint at his strongest again for me, you know, but he brings up the chest, that he, Jack and Silver being the only people who knows its whereabouts, and obviously with Jack not being about in the moment, Silver presumed dead. Yeah, it's a threat, and Billy knows it. A threat to get his way, to take charge. Yeah, it's just a lot of leading by fear and threats in this episode. It's working out for Woods Rogers right now, but in pulling rank here, in making the threat, Flint is contradicting himself a little bit for me. You know, they are against the clock. Most of the time I am for his plans, but like the faff with the fort in season 2, his pride, you know, it gets in the way sometimes. Yeah, as I've all just gone through, it's so complicated to give a final alliance and lean one way, going for one way or the other in this moment, because they both do have their points. And that's why, you know, my third MVP nomination is about to play her hand, because she just says enough, you know, this is going nowhere. And yeah, she sort of says 3 men know the location, 3 men and 1 woman. So yeah, Silver told her. Flint is taken aback, I think it's safe to say. Madi knows it would be preferable if one voice governed tomorrow, but she doesn't think it's going to be quite that simple. There will be no Pirate King here, of that much I am certain. Again, obviously calling back to that conversation with them, and an absolute power move from Madi. A necessary power move, not a spiteful one. She watched, she waited, she saw it was going nowhere. So she said enough is enough, you know, she stepped up and she sort of said, you have forgotten about me. You know, I have a say in this too. If you two, you know, simply can't agree, I'm going to get involved. God, I love her. Because yeah, it's too personal between these two. And, you know, this is so close now to just splitting right in the middle. All they've kind of been fearing, all she spoke about Silver, her fears was in that scene. But yeah, like I say, it's an MVP nomination for her. Great and needed bashing of heads in this moment. Like with Anne, and to a slightly smaller extent, Eleanor, the women this episode really giving some of these hot-headed guys a reality check in the moment. Of course, these tensions with these 3 will kind of continue into the next episode. But yeah, I think that's everything. I think that's everything to go over with our characters. So yeah, let's lastly just get into that MVP.
Last item.
Okay, so yeah, MVP. So we have Billy Bones, Woods Rogers, or Madi. As usual with first episodes, there's no one screaming out as a clear winner to me. I think it's pretty even arguments all round. Yeah, both Billy and Woods Rogers have achieved a lot in, you know, the time we've missed between seasons. And Madi has spent time learning about her surroundings. You know, she watches, she observes, confides only really with Silver, and so has been trusted with a huge secret that she reveals only when Billy and Flint are just pulling rank and getting nowhere. I think I lean more towards the guys for today's, because neither of them will likely, or I'm very sure not, be nominated again, let alone win. Because it's just going to get too dark with them both, and I'm not a fan of it. Whereas Madi's chances of picking up a second or a third, you know, fare much better. So yeah, so does Billy deserve that third MVP win, especially as this will be his 4th nomination in a row? Or, when all is said and done, does Woods Rogers deserve to be on the scoreboard? You know, a character I despise, in case you didn't catch, but do love what he brings to the show as a villain. Oh, yeah, you know what? Fair's got to be fair, hasn't it? Obviously, I hate how up on things he is at this time, how he's outsmarted our guys. Had it been the other way around, I would have been so hyped for Flint, and I wouldn't even be discussing like this if he wins or not. He'd just win, you know. And also by bringing in this awful guy Barrenger as a sort of second on Nassau, he's just about got the streets in check now. Yeah, it is all through kind of sheer fear and terror. But that's sort of how Billy's doing it now as well, how Flint and Silver's kind of done it before. So I can't discount him when, you know, I've awarded my favourites for dark deeds as well. Whatever his full reasons, he's married Eleanor, got her under the thumb a little bit. Yeah, awful man, and we're truly seeing a couple of episodes. But yeah, in 10 episodes time, he's a great character that I think deserves his moment and to be on the board once. So is it my most reluctant MVP? Yes. But the game's the game, and Woods Rogers is winning this episode. But yeah, alright Woods Rogers, take it, take your MVP, and never again. But yeah, no, he deserves to get on the board. But yeah, anyway, I'll be back very soon for episode 2, which right now skips my mind. Is that where they go to the plantation and Billy fully turns and fires on him? I think that is next episode. That might be episode 3. But yeah, anyway, shut up, Ben. Right, okay, stop talking. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I will see you very soon for episode 2 of season 4. Peace out. Bye.